Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the OverSeers. My name's Proilios, and I'm joined as usual by my co host Nightwing, and we are on the rear end of the Kickoff Clash tournament. We had some really interesting games, both in the NA as well as APAC regions. We got a lot of different twists and turns in both sets of brackets, and came up with two winners that Nightwing and I didn't really have in mind as the most clear winners for those regions. So we will talk about that in a bit. But firstly, I want to get your thoughts on the overall kickoff clash and how it went, Nightwing, especially the return to live events in the NA region hosted by the Dallas Real.
Yeah, I think the return to live events was quite good. Seeing the fan reactions and everyone really hyped up. Even the casters getting a break and them not having to, record behind a green screen made it so that they could really shine. So I think the broadcast as a product overall went out pretty well, and I think you could really see that in the final culmination in the kickoff clash. And I think that was the case in both the regions, but especially the NA region, where you could see the broadcast was really just becoming a beast of its own, which I thought was really fun to see. Uh, competitively speaking, I think obviously the finals weren't super close. You did see, the winners kind of take it all and not to really be competed very hardly, competed very heavily against. But it was still fun to watch and a, a good tournament for the books, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And uh, just to do a quick recap of what happened, in the APAC region, the Seoul Dynasty ended up winning their first ever tournament in Overwatch League history. Like, it's really surprising because the Seoul Dynasty have always had a bunch of talented players, but the team just kept on stumbling here and there. But they finally got a win, and it was a big surprise for me, especially because I was a big Toby naysayer. Since Toby is like being a head coach for the very first time this year. So the Seoul Dynasty wriggled their way to the top tier of the league finally after so long and backed their first ever tournament victory. I think a lot of it was on the back of Profit, who just absolutely popped off on the tracer. Like, he was just sticking pulse bombs like a madman, and his kind of dive duo with Smurf on the Winston was just remarkable to see. I think huge props to Fitz as well, who played a really consistent hit scan no matter if it was the Soldier or the Widowmaker. And naturally, with like Vindime being a really surprising rookie candidate in the main support category. So all in all, just a fantastic showing by the Seoul Dynasty. They absolutely dominated the Philadelphia Fusion in the finals. They also beat the Shanghai Dragons quite convincingly before that. So like the Seoul Dynasty are looking extremely strong right now. What do you think really clicked for the Seoul Dynasty, Nightwing? Was it more so their synergy this year, or just the individual pop-off moments that sort of carried them to the top?
I think it has to be a mixture of both because going into Overwatch 2, you don't have as much damage mitigation. You don't really have as solid rotations. So some of it has to be on the back of just individual skill of the Soul Dynasty players, especially Prophet, who you could see going ham on his own on some of those maps where he would just take over the game and the rest of the Soul Dynasty would not even really have the opportunity to play. It would just be the Prophet show. That said, it was also complemented by many other maps where whenever it got close, the Soul Dynasty were just a better team overall than the enemy team. And that's where you could see, like you said, those dives coordinated with Smurf come in. And honestly, it was still mostly just the Prophet and Smurf show. I think Fitz did well in his own role, and the supports were quite good as well. When Dime went aggro, in sort of unexpected situations at times and got away with it. Some of that due to just the way Smurf positioned himself, some of that due to how creative provided him the right support. But all in all, I think the team just worked very well to support each other, and they really just found those timings where each of them could excel, I think. And that's what the difference maker was. I think some other teams were starting to get there as well. I think teams like the Philly Fusion, like you mentioned, are still getting there, and they have a lot of potential. But the Seoul Dynasty has many veteran players, and players that have been at the forefront of the league for quite a while now, and some other players like Creative that are starting to heat up in recent times, and then there's obviously rookie players like Mintime. So I think they're just coming together cohesively quite well this particular tournament, and that's what got them the W.
Yeah, and I think conversely in the NA region, where the LA Gladiators won the Kickoff Clash, um, I think a lot of their success was still based on just good coaching and discipline. Like naturally, there were a lot of pop-off moments from all the members of the team. You know, Patiphan just stepped up a lot on the Soldier 76, um, proved all of his haters wrong, and naturally he had a fantastic team to play alongside. So naturally, with Rhino's consistent Winston play, then they had space come in on Circuit Royale to play a really fantastic Sigma. Uh, they had Kevster as well backing the team up on the Genji, and naturally Shu and Funny Astro are skewed. They just form one of the best backlines in the league. So I think the Gladiators are a really cohesive team overall. Like how they suddenly got so good is a mystery to me because we did believe in them and we did think they were one of the contenders for the Kickoff Clash, but we were probably putting some teams like the Dallas Fuel and the San Francisco Shock ahead of them. So props to the team. They really managed to step up big time, and they've gotten their second tournament win ever in our history. So super happy for them. Your thoughts on the team, Nightwing? Because I honestly think the Gladiators are the best team throughout the league right now.
I think I can definitely see where that argument would come from. I mean, uh, I think with the Gladiators, what you saw was them not really perfecting a singular comp since the beginning of this particular season. You could see them experiment a lot and pull out a lot of these map-based compositions, and they would swap in their tanks, which I think was something that some other teams were just not doing, either because they didn't have a second tank or because they were committed to a particular meta. Whereas for the Gladiators, they had this sort of multi-pronged approach in terms of developing the play styles that they would play in Overwatch 2. And I think that's what paid off for them because you could see on maps like Circuit Royale, they had mastered that Sigma comp more than any other team, basically. They would bring in space for the Sigma, and then they would bring in Ans, obviously, for the sniper duels. And he obviously just dominated players like Gurio uh, in the Kickoff Clash against the Dallas Fuel. And obviously you've got Kevster, who's I think at this point just consistently an almost MVP level player on the heroes that he plays, and he's hyperflex as well. Uh, Padifan definitely stepped up compared to some relatively disappointing performances, I would say, in the qualifiers. But going into the actual playoffs or the kickoff clash, he was able to really step up and just get a lot more support from his team, work within that gladiator system, and get the job done. I think Reiner has also been a very stable tank for this team. He's been a little cheeky at times, but overall he's just incredibly solid. And obviously, we knew that he was one of the best like tank pickups for this particular season, especially from the NA region. And I think that's coming to fruition under the coach of under Coach Face and the rest of the Gladiator staff. I think the fact that they didn't instantly go leaps and bounds ahead of every other team because they didn't focus on one singular comp uh, is probably something you can fault them for. But then when you see what it developed into with them mastering multiple comps to a fairly high degree, and that's how they're able to clinch each map like comp by comp almost. I think that's the difference maker for the Gladiators this particular stage, and what got them the tournament win.
Yup. And I think before we can go any further and talk about uh, like any week one games or anything like that, I think we should talk about some roster moves. Um, let's start off with just one move that has come from the APAC region. which is that the Guangzhou Charge have dropped Molly, who was their flex support, and I think it's quite an unsurprising move, considering that they've not played Molly at all so far this season. They've just been playing Farway on the flex support role, and that makes total sense because Farway has proven to be a much stronger flex support than Molly. It kind of sucks to be Molly at this point because he's been like benched very frequently, no matter which team he's been on, and he just been like sort of transferred from one team to the next, just kind of like a Chinese mascot for all of these teams where like they can just have Korean players start for the most part. Like at least that changed with the Guangzhou Charge, where for them it was just a matter of which flexible, like which is a really potent flex support in the market, and they had signed Molly, which was honestly probably a realistic and fair signing because I don't think any top tier flex support would have wanted to join the Guangzhou Charge. But then Farway got released by the Hunters and he was a free agent, and they just leapt forward and got him. So that was a pretty good move. But anyway, yeah, Nightwing, I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
I think this may be a move that the Guangzhou Charge might eventually regret, just because it's going to be hard for them to pick up anyone for a sort of 30-day contract or something for, like in the eventuality that you might just see like a double flex support meta come in. However, we've been parroting that since the beginning of the season, and that doesn't seem to be something that's actually there, like in the game in a stable manner. So I think they're probably fine for now, and they can get away with it. Uh, Obviously, many teams in the league are sort of downsizing at the moment as well, and it's sort of an unstable game. It's a new game, so some players are going to be better at it. Some players are going to find that transition hard, and because it's more individually like skill based, you might just see uh, some players' weaknesses get exposed coming into this new game. I think anyone that's a fundamentally solid player and understands the game and has the adaptability is gonna, have some success in Overwatch 2. And maybe Molly just wasn't the right fit for the Guangzhou Charge. I think he definitely still has a few ins into the system going forward, but he'll probably have to go back on that tier 2 grind whenever that starts up. Since currently it's just the Overwatch League and everything else is sort of shut down, just standing by waiting for the actual game to come out. So unfortunate for Molly and unfortunate for any tier 2 player as well, because their entire uh, sort of feed in system into the Overwatch League is kind of halted at the moment. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, and let's now talk about a bunch of roster moves that happened in the NA region. Starting off with the Vancouver Titans, who had a bunch of different moves that they made. So, firstly, they dropped their flex DPS player Seicoe. Then they dropped Flubby and Pew, who were the coaching staff, and they signed Deepay as their new head coach. And I feel like they've probably made the decision to remove three members of the team due to budget constraints. Because I honestly don't see the team investing a lot in high level talent, and like naturally if they lose two of their coaches and lose one flex DPS, they kind of need to make up for it in some way. And I guess signing DPay is their way of making sure that the team still has some direction to follow, preferably a better one than before, which I can definitely see happening because DPay is just like far more proven than Flubby and Pew. And I honestly really like the signing for the team because they just seem like a very messy team right now. They don't really have a clear game plan whenever they go in. It just feels like they're doing whatever they want and aren't really on the same page. So I think having Deepay in there, who has managed a lot of different players before, managed mixed rosters before, and honestly been fairly competitive with the Gladiators. Naturally, it's a great signing. And as for Deepay, I think there was naturally no other team that had signed him, so it's something's better than nothing, I guess. So it's an opportunity for him as well to explore the teams, see if anything clicks between him and the Titans organization. Maybe next year he can form a much better team for them and go for those playoff runs. But right now, he just needs to make this team slightly competitive because they are winless and they're looking quite abysmal at the moment. I think probably one bright spot is that he has worked with Mirror, who is the starting flex DPS for this team. So maybe he can play around with like Mirror's capabilities there, and let's see how things work. I honestly don't know what results this is gonna get us, but yeah.
So DPA was actually co-streaming the Overwatch League at times. Sometimes he'd join in with Avas, other times he would just watch it by himself. And I was watching him one of these days, and he was power ranking the teams. He talked about how Vancouver Titans was one of the teams that he could probably fix if he was in there as a coach, because he sees a lot of mistakes that I think he said that he thought he has the specific talents to be able to work with. So that gives me some hope for the Titans. Uh, just in terms of player quality, they're not quite all the way there compared to many of these other teams. But maybe if their coaching is just a little more robust, they'll actually be able to get things done. Obviously, that'll be a claim that like anyone looking for a job in the Overwatch League will make. But considering that DP has been a consistent part of the Overwatch League as a head coach for quite a while now, gives at least some amount of credibility to his claims, I guess. But that's something we'll just have to see on the field, I guess. In terms of letting go of Seicoe, I don't really care, if I'm being honest. I think they can probably make do with the players that they have, especially with just Aspire and Shockwave. I thought that was the lineup that the Vancouver Titans looked even remotely competitive with. Seicoe didn't really seem to be doing that much, if I'm being honest. Obviously, he's still a good tier 2 prospect, but it's nothing really great compared to the players they've retained. Uh, I don't particularly think Flubby and Pew did that much in terms of like providing great coaching to the Titans, because obviously the players were very sad to see them go on social media and everything, and they did like have praise in terms of talking about their dedication to the game, but in terms of seeing hard results, you did not see those from Flubby and Pew for an extremely extended part of time, almost the length of Deepe's career, which is kind of crazy, uh, though not quite all there. Um, so yeah, I think I'm excited to see the coaching staff change and at least make the Vancouver Titans get one win, if nothing else. Uh, I think they can definitely grab some wins against teams like the Paris Eternal at least. And maybe if they reach really hard, maybe the London Spitfire, etc., and the Boston Uprising. But outside of that, I think the Vancouver Titans are still going to have to work really, really hard, especially now that they're down a man. Uh, you know, now that they've got a particular lineup to work with, that lineup needs to expand their hero pool and also just deepen it and increase their level of play. Because currently, I'm seeing almost nothing out of this team, and that needs to change for the health of the franchise and like for the health of the league. If you've just got these dead weight teams like the LA Valiant last year hanging around, then it makes the product unwatchable, uh, which is just not great for anyone. Especially since this is kind of the only endorsement we have for Overwatch 2 at the moment, is the Overwatch League. And if the product is just not going to be fun to watch because teams like the Vancouver Titans are complete deadweights, then that's just kind of a loss for all of us.
Yeah, definitely. And I think naturally, side by side, the kind of the lateral counterpart in the NA region to the Vancouver Titans is the Paris Eternal at the moment, because they have also been winless and they haven't looked quite good. So even though this is not a roster update, it's kind of a team update that the Eternal will be relocating to Las Vegas in 2023, and like I don't know what really we can say about this move, but like if you just think about it at the surface level, it seems like a pretty rational move to me, because I think what we all can see right now is that like the full COVID situation throughout the world has still not ended. It's still coming back in waves, even though like not all waves are fortunately that impactful. Um, like last year, you saw the Paris Eternal struggling a lot because they were stuck in EU and they were competing with teams in the NA region. And then, if by chance they qualified for the playoffs, then they would have to play against teams that are playing from servers in Hawaii or with the Asian servers. So either way, it's a loss situation for the Eternal in that context, because they are never really playing on low ping. So, like, if at all, if God forbid there's another wave of COVID and the players, like, the team needs to make a call on where the players need to be. Currently, the franchise is in Paris, all the operations are in Europe, and the team will have to go back there because naturally their team is full of players from EU with the exception of Glister. Um, so it makes more sense that they have a base in NA so that they can still be competitive regardless of the COVID situation. At least there will be like more resources for the players, even if the players are from EU and they are still stuck in the NA region. So I think, yeah, in that context, it's a good move, but otherwise, I don't really see anything else to say about it.
I think some of the reason that uh, the Paris Eternals started off in Paris was because the owner also owns the uh, football team Olympique de Marseille and Olympique de Marseille. I don't know. I may be mispronouncing it, but I think that just gave them some confidence that they'd be able to rally around, create some homestands. But I guess they must be just diverting their resources to Las Vegas at this point, and that's it, really. I think the Paris Eternal were somewhat successful in tapping into their French fan base and even appealing to them by keeping certain players on their roster at certain points, such as, they had Soon and who was it? Nico GDH on their roster in previous years.
And Ben Best.
But they're sort of moving away from that French identity at this point. So they might as well move to like the American crowd where Overwatch is slightly more popular, uh, and they'll just be able to work with the rest of the league to create good homestands. So in that sense, it may be a good move for them. I think we'll just have to see. I don't think it's particularly consequential, uh, especially since, as far as I know, the Paris Eternal is already in NA this year, if I remember correctly. Maybe that's the London Spitfire. Uh, but either way, I think good luck to them in working with the rebranding. We can see some new skins come out, which might be good. Hopefully, they don't go with a very silly color scheme. Uh, but yeah, it's not super consequential for like the competitive integrity of the game.
Yeah, yes. What will they even like rename the team to? I'm more interested in that. Like, do they go Las Vegas Vegans? I don't know. What else sounds kind of close to
I
like, I
mean,
don't know. I
Las
don't know.
Vegas is a sort of gambling hub, right? You
Yeah.
might go with something like the Las Vegas Aces, like for cards or something like that.
hmm
That might be nice.
Las Vegas Gamblers, maybe. Shout out to the Soul Dynasty player, ex Soul Dynasty
Yeah,
player.
signing Gambler as head coach and then just donating the organization to him. That might be nice.
Yeah. I think let's move on and talk about the Toronto Defiant, who recently released KDG, who was the head coach. And this came like as quite a surprise to me because there was no talk of KDG being kind of like a, a point of concern for the organization. We did catch wind of this team facing internal issues a couple of weeks ago when Halo put out a tweet saying Muse and Finale was seemingly looking to leave the team. But like the Defiant sort of put out those fires, said that no, there's nothing wrong. I think even Muse put out a tweet saying no, we're not looking to leave, we're fine, something like that. I honestly don't quote me on this, but essentially the team just kind of denied that there were any problems going on, and then they released KDG. I think this is definitely a big blow to the team because KDG is quite a smart coach. He might not be top tier, but his eye for talent, rookie talent especially, is quite good. And naturally, with him gone, that leaves the team without a head coach. They do have a couple of assistant coaches, but none of them has been officially promoted to head coach. So I don't really know what direction the team is taking. Are they going to promote one of them, or are they going to sign on a different coach, and then kind of go through the full painful onboarding process? So I don't really know, but I think the Define might hit a bit of a slump until the new coaching structure is kind of finalized. What do you think here, Nightwing?
I think it's not super surprising that that KDG would be kicked, honestly, because I mean, if players like Finale that were reported to have issues are not being kicked, and they're having issues with the like coaching staff, then probably the person you would fire is KDG, right? If you're not actually firing the players themselves. So that's understandable in that sense. I'm not sure if information of why this was done would ever become public. I think that's extremely unlikely if the organization is trying to be professional whatsoever. Shout out Boston Uprising, by the way. Um, and I think the Toronto Defiant are, yeah, like you said, probably going to suffer a little bit of a slump if they're having trouble coaching. However, if just a chaotic environment is also sorted on the team, then that just might be better for the players' mental. And obviously, they've still got two pretty okay assistant coaches on their roster, and they might be able to get something done. I think the players, uh, you know, are still like just hungry to learn and hungry to get some wins under their belt finally, because a lot of these players have joined the league either this year or maybe last year, and they have that sort of just adaptive mindset. So I think this team should still be able to just bounce back from this if they get the right coaching staff in order. I'm sort of surprised they didn't actually pick up Deepe for this role, but maybe the Toronto Defiant have got some actually good coaching staff that they sort of want to pick up, or they want to just promote one of their assistant coaches to head coach. Uh, we'll see, I guess. But yeah, KDG's eye for talent did seem like something that had actual substantial evidence to show for it. I mean, he did get like a lot of good players, especially players like Hisu picked up in recent memory. And it's a little bit sad to see him go. Maybe he'll find another role in the league if whatever infraction he did was not too extreme. But we'll have to see how that goes, I guess.
In before they pick up Logix as their new head coach. Logix, who just turned 25 years old recently. Anyway, jokes aside, let's talk about the San Francisco Shock, who signed Mikeyy as a new tank player. Like for those of you that might not remember Mikeyy, he had temporarily played main tank for the Boston Uprising in season 3, and he had honestly looked pretty lackluster. He looked pretty bad. I'm not gonna lie. Like at that point, I was like, this guy needs a lot of work. He seems to be doing just like whatever the hell he wants. He does not seem to be that skilled of a main tank player, and he needs to go back to basics, just improve, and then come back into the league. So he had to do exactly that because after his stint with the Uprising, he was released from the roster, and unsurprisingly, he didn't get a team for season 4. Then he went back to playing in Tier 2, played for a bunch of kind of quite unpopular teams in Tier 2, and played in collegiate. And now he is just joining this, like transitioning to this top level team in the Overwatch League, just from the collegiate level of gameplay. So this is going to be quite tricky, I think, for him as well as the organization. Uh, I don't know if this is a wise pickup because I think Coluge was not doing too badly on the main tank role. His Winston naturally, like, you could see that his primal mechanics are not that great. But all in all, he seemed to be quite a disciplined player and a coachable player. So I was surprised to see Mikeyy being brought in. Um, Either way, I think if Mikeyy is coachable, he can definitely work well with the team and fill in for those Reinhardt and Orisa kind of roles. Um, I feel like the team might want to lean more into that brawl style if they're bringing in like a Reinhardt player, especially. So we'll see what happens. I'm not too hot about this pickup because I've not really seen any great gameplay out of this guy. So yeah, I guess we'll just wait and watch.
I mean, yeah, I'm not super excited about this pickup either. I think some of it has to be just a shout out from Kalush himself, since obviously they've both played on Maryville as far as I remember. And I mean, Mikeyy doesn't have any great contenders results in recent history. He wasn't really great in season three, and Fusions was mostly played over him. And Fusions himself was pretty terrible and close to some of the worst players that we had in the league at the time, almost. And I think that doesn't bode extremely well for Mikey. Obviously, his stint with Marvel Esports did, see him get success, but it's just not that consistent, and it's hard for me to really rate this player very highly. I thought Kaluj was doing mostly fine. If they just got some additional help to bolster Kaluj's own skills on the Winston, improve those primal mechanics, etc. I think Kaluj did have the fundamentals already pretty much wrapped up nicely inside his head and worked quite well with the team. So I think adding a variable like this will just sort of harm the team, if I'm being honest. But hopefully I'm wrong about that. If they're able to separate their roles a little bit better, similar to what the Gladiators have done, with Space playing the Sigma, etc., and then and then Reiner playing the main tank. If they're able to replicate some of that with the SF Shock, then maybe this might be something that will actually work quite well for them. But it's hard for me to believe that when the player in question that has been signed has not really seen that much success. Uh, so yeah, that's just a little bit hard for me to believe at the moment. But as someone that really likes to watch the SF Shock play and someone that has uh, a decent amount of faith in the Shock coaching staff and their scouting, I think there might be potential for Mikey to actually turn out quite well, because I had many doubts about Kaluj as well. So if those were alleviated, especially with Kaluj mostly playing just the main tank, which is not even his actual main role, maybe Mikey's got some potential in him as well. But that's just my Shock fan copium talking, I think.
No, no, that's fair, I think, because usually the Shock don't sign bad players. They at least, even though they might sign unproven players, but they usually are able to like mold them into something that fits the team. I feel like there, there would have been a fair share of scouting on Krusty and 9K's part for this. So I don't know. I feel like temporarily they will take some time to like integrate Mikey well into the roster. They might hit a bit of a slump uh, for a week or two, but I think they'll be fine overall. And yeah, I think those are all the roster moves that we wanted to discuss. There, like the upcoming week of play, naturally only going to happen in the NA region. APAC will start next week, but we don't have a lot of like highly competitive games. We do have like Shock versus Fuel, for example, or Atlanta versus Dallas. But I don't think there's much to talk about. Like we don't really know what the meta is going to be like, and with all of these roster moves, I feel like it's just a lot to think about right now. Maybe next week, once we have a clearer idea of what the meta is, what these regions are playing, and how we can evaluate these players and teams, we'll have a lot more to talk about. So for this week, we are just gonna end things over here. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up, Nightwing?
Yeah, I think you should probably mostly be looking out for the teams that already did well in the Kickoff Clash, especially considering the system that they've got in place with the mid-season madness tournament actually getting like the seeding is actually affected by the results in the Kickoff Clash. The points are not reset. So if whatever team you're a fan of did well in the previous tournament, then you should be excited for them to do well in this one as well. Just based off of the format sort of favoring them, even if they don't do quite as well in the actual qualifiers this stage. So that's a little bit odd, but I guess it's good if you're a fan of teams like the Fuel or the Gladiators. But yeah, apart from that, look out for these new signings and these new changes that these teams are making. Maybe look out for a win for the Vancouver Titans for the first time this season. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Yep, I mean, I don't know about the Titans winning at least this week because they're up against the Gladiators, which is DP's former team, so that'll be interesting to watch. And their second game is up against the Houston Outlaws, and I don't think that team's gonna let them win either. But yeah, should be interesting to see if Deepa actually changes any kind of like any looks within the team and just makes us feel like it's a brand new team, which would be fantastic to watch. Anyway, I think that's all for this episode from us. Thanks a lot for listening. Do share your comments about the Paris Eternal um, and their rebranding. Like we would love to hear kind of some innovative names for the team, like something that goes with Las Vegas naturally. So yeah, keep it coming in the comments, and we'll see you next week. Bye bye.